The Short Game is listener-supported on Patreon. If you'd like to support the show and join us on our Discord, head to theshortgame.net or patreon.com/theshortgame.
Welcome back to The Short Game. This is a show about short video games, games that respect your time. I'm Raygan Kelly, and in the ultimate in respecting your time, this week we have pared down the show to only one co-host.
The only one that matters.
I wouldn't necessarily go that far. Shane, thank you for joining me.
We know you're here for just the twin brothers talking about nerdy shit.
Yes, indeed. So this week we are talking about Home Safety Hotline. This is a game that was recommended to us on our Discord, so thank you to our... I'm sorry, I don't remember who recommended this. I'm certain that someone on the Discord did. I might be misremembering. Maybe nobody did. Maybe I recommended this to the show. I don't know. I saw a lot of talk about this on various places, Twitter, and... I'm no longer on Twitter. One of the Twitter methadones that I'm on, maybe Blue Sky, I don't remember.
I'm checking the Discord right now, Raygan, and I think you were the first person on the Discord to mention Home Safety Hotline.
Oh, okay. Well, then...
So, thanks for the recommendation, Raygan.
Yeah, there we go. Well, I was really interested in covering this because it kind of checks a lot of specific boxes for me. Home Safety Hotline is I would kind of call this interactive fiction adjacent game where you are playing as a call center worker in 1996 at a home safety hotline, and the hook is that the calls that you are getting, some of them are about perfectly normal home safety and other related homeowner problems, like termites or bedbugs, God forbid.
Mold in the basement.
Yeah, black mold. But of course, some of them become darker, stranger, weirder. And so it's a game that veers into weird horror, or I don't know, how would you categorize the sort of genre space this is going into?
Yeah, it gets into a little bit of a slightly fantastical cosmic horror that is kind of rife with little weird guys, weird little critters that are probably in your house. And if you don't deal with them exactly right, they could be very dangerous to you and your family. So call now.
Yeah, and the thing that kind of drew me into this, one is I always love sort of I don't know if there's a proper name for this, but I always sort of think of it as sort of interface games. Mm-hmm. I think back to things like Her Story and games like that, where you are using a retro computer in the video game, and this does that. So you are, in terms of the interface, you boot this game up. It shows you an image of what looks like a creaky old 386 sitting in a creepy basement. Click on it to log in, and you are looking at a slightly janky 90s desktop with a bunch of files on the desktop and an icon for the Home Safety Hotline like client or whatever. And you're clocking in for your shift, taking calls for the Home Safety Hotline, and using this creaky old 90s database application thing to look up information about the various threats that people are facing when they call you. So interface-wise, I really was drawn in by that. I love things like that. I love the, like fake computer. I love like looking things up on a fake internet. We just did this with The Root Trees Are Dead. Yeah. Like this is a thing, and it's a thing I really like.
Mm-hmm. And this kind of is in this area that I would say is similar to the style of analog horror. You have this kind of online digital horror genre of things that are often from the 80s or 90s, dealing with older technology like a VHS tape or, in this case, an older computer. And this is a fun horror genre because it has a lot of nostalgia for earlier eras of horror. A lot of time when you see retro horror. It's throwing back to like the slasher genre or things like that. This one isn't really a throwback to anything in particular. It's really just about the kind of eerie horror narrative within this sort of ancient technology of the CRT and telephones and voicemails. Not even voicemails. Sorry, we had answering machines. So yeah, this is in terms of style and terms of how it plays, it's kind of a different game. But whereas with the root trees being kind of an interface thing, the interface is really part of a larger puzzle. This one kind of has a puzzle, but it's also seems like it's very much meant to just sort of be more of an experience.
I could see that. I think what this game is kind of talking about the sort of genre of horror there, analog horror is a good way to put it. That's one sort of aspect of it. But I also think this like really directly ties into a very specific horror subgenre that also I think you and I have a lot of connection with and kind of really enjoy. And that's, I don't know if there's a proper name for this. I always sort of think of them as like the Warehouse 43 likes, which is probably the wrong thing because that's like the lesser known version of this. The SCP vibe,
that was the one
right?
that we kind of
that's the one that everyone is on the internet.
Yeah, people know it as the. What genre do you call that? But we have so many different examples that I guess both of us are into. You mentioned Warehouse.
Bureaucratic,
43.
realistic horror, I think, is sort of the vibe.
Mm-hmm.
So like, for anybody who may not be familiar with that other work that I was just sort of referencing, the SCP collaborative project is a sort of online meme made mass collaborative writing project / wiki where lots and lots of people have contributed works that all sort of fit a sort of standardized format, which is these sort of very bureaucratic reports on a sort of pseudo-governmental organization securing, containing, and protecting the public from supernatural threats. And the weirder the better with the supernatural threats, but of course written in the most dry, bureaucratic, like office memo language you can imagine. And there is something really great about that sort of like intersection of dry, bureaucratic language with, truly like cosmic horror stuff.
What I absolutely love about it is there are two kinds of horror competing for your attention in this kind of work, where you have the kind of existential cosmic horror, the unknowable and the kind of incomprehensibly evil, or just simply, obliviously dangerous. But then there's also the kind of Kafka-esque bureaucratic horror element of, we're under assault from things we can't understand, and our only hope is a hopelessly ineffective and Byzantine system that we're actually trapped in with the creatures that we're trying to escape from. So,
by the way, Shane, have you
control?
This is a total sidebar, but have you seen? There's a specific SCP work that came out a little while ago that I'm particularly interested in, and I've got downloaded on my Kindle and haven't actually read yet. But have you read anything about There Is No Anti-Memetics Division?
No. What's that?
It's like a at least a novella length SCP work, more sort of novel like than a lot. And the premise is that they're I'm just going to read you the description because it's by an author who goes by QNTM online, and you can search for There Is No Anti-Memetics Division. You can read it on the web, but you can also get like a $5 Kindle version. And this is the Kindle description for the audiobook version. An anti-meme is an idea with self-censoring properties, an idea which, by its intrinsic nature, discourages or prevents people from spreading it. Anti-memes are real. Think of any piece of information which you couldn't share with anybody, like passwords, taboos, or dirty secrets. Or any piece of information which would be difficult to share even if you tried. Complex equations, very boring passages of text, large blocks of random numbers, and dreams. But anomalous anti-memes are another matter entirely. How do you contain something you can't record or remember? How do you fight a war against an enemy with effortless perfect camouflage when you can never even know that you're at war? Welcome to the anti-memetics division. No, this is not your first day. I really like that premise.
The premise sounds fantastic, and it has me very curious because how can you possibly tell a halfway decent story about something so absurd?
Well, I agree, but it's gotten really good reviews for one of these. It's been talked up online, which is why I downloaded it on my Kindle a couple of weeks ago, and I haven't actually read it yet because I've got a couple of other things I'm working through. But
there's always a lot to
read. I don't know. I love a good story. That sounds fun.
Yeah,
so
let me know what you think of it.
Yeah, I will. Fun. But that's kind of one of the kind of things you might find in an SCP. A lot of them are more standard, like what if a statue killed people? We keep it in a box. Don't open the box. That's the SCP vibe.
If you look at it, it's going to get you.
Well, of course, we talked about SCP, which got me off on a big tangent because I like that project, and I always like to talk about the SCPs. But this is a whole genre. Of course, there's the similar organization in Control, but this game isn't exactly the same. It's kind of an interesting twist on it. It starts from you are a lowly call center worker working for the Home Safety Hotline, and at first you are given access to only the bare minimum of entries in the database of the Home Safety Hotline's what do you call that? Their threats database or things people might call about. I don't know. They don't. I don't think they had a name for it.
Just a list of different home safety issues. And when you start the first day, the list seems quite short, and the information, I guess, reminds me of, we talked about Encarta not long ago on this podcast, and the encyclopedia entries were quite short on that, similar to something you might find on an Encarta from back in the day.
It does have a bit of that vibe, but the first thing that you notice is that in amongst all of the real entries, you only start with real world stuff like cockroaches. There are also many, many entries whose name is just listed as access denied or something like that, insufficient access. And
I want to say for our listeners, this game does have a pretty encyclopedic list of home safety issues, including mundane threats like cockroaches, but their advice on things like cockroaches is not great. It's not comprehensive. I would encourage you to really read up on how to get rid of the roaches in your home before taking the advice that's in this video game.
It's a silly thing, but playing through this, especially on the first day when you're just people are calling up and saying, I keep finding these things on my countertop that looks like coffee. And you read the cockroach entry and it's their droppings can look like coffee. And I was okay, click, that guy has cockroaches in his home. But while I was playing through that part of the game, I was you know what? Maybe I would, as a homeowner, maybe it would be good for me to play a game. I would like a game that legitimately talked you through all the shit that you should know about being a homeowner that I don't know, maybe that would fall into the power washing simulator genre. I would love a game that subtly gamifies learning to not let your home that you worked so hard to purchase fall apart in disrepair. Because I struggle with that.
Yeah. Tell me about it. My house was built in the 40s. Yours is practically brand new. The amount that I've had to learn about knob and tube wiring and the modern version of this game, if it weren't set in the 90s, would be how to figure out what the boomer that owned your house before you did that's not up to code, and how to check to see if the old siding on the building is full of asbestos or not. That's not in here. I feel like they, even in the 90s, they could have included asbestos. Isn't that about when we started seeing all those ads about mesothelioma?
Yeah. Definitely that's They missed a trick with the asbestos here. Should have put that in along with the boggarts and the trolls.
Well, let's talk boggarts, buddy. What they start introducing some weird. So, in addition to do you have the list of creatures in front of you?
I do, but it's long enough that it's an alphabetical order that it's kind of tricky to go through. What are you looking for?
The first thing they introduce on the second day that I just loved was a slug that shows up in your basement.
Oh, the stair slug.
Yeah, that's great. Let's talk about these calls, right?
Yeah.
So you get these calls, and there may be, there's very little back and forth going on. They're basically calling up and saying something like, "Hey, I talked to your guy last time, and he said I had rats, but rats don't leave a circle of bones." What's going on? There's an orange glow emanating from the center of the circle, and that's the kind of call you start getting.
Yep.
What was your favorite of the creatures that you start seeing?
I really liked the various types of hob. It starts with like common hob, which is, I suppose, kind of like a hobgoblin. You know, they're these little like tiny goblinoid type of dudes who live in your house. And as you keep getting different, as more entries keep getting revealed to you, you keep learning about more and more different types of hob. And one of my favorite details is the description of all of them. There's like different types of hob. When you learn about the common hob, it's just sort of got this little like baby Groot ass looking little mofo kind of peeking out from behind a chair, and honestly, he looks kind of cute. And every single type of hob, there's like common hobs, fracture hobs, pipe hobs. Different hobs that like live in different areas of your home and have different effects. And one of the details that it includes in almost all of their descriptions is like things like common hobs, blah, blah, blah. They do not bear a false face. And I was like, what? Okay. And, some of the creepier hobs,
yeah.
Well, they do bear false faces. What does that mean? Left as an exercise for the viewer, apart from that, they have creepy looking little, I don't know, masks on. What does that mean? I don't know. But they're cool. You have to be able to tell whether something is happening because of a hob or because of something much more mundane. So like, are the clanking pipes coming from frozen pipes? Just the pipes are frozen. Or is there a pipe growth, a kind of entity that lives in and bursts your pipes and is, somewhat dangerous? Or is it a pipe hob or a toilet hob? Mm-hmm. Like there's different types of creatures that can live in similar and be very, very difficult to distinguish between, but there's always some little tip, little hint in the call, some offhand element, something that somebody mentions about their particular problem that matches up with one of the details in the entries about the hobs or the stair slugs or the soap sprites or whatever. And you can narrow it down, but it is frankly kind of difficult because sometimes these little details are quite subtle.
Yeah, and this sort of variety of kind of fairy inflected little weird guys, it is, especially early on, one of my favorite things. There's a big theme of little fairy guys and trolls, kind of a little bit of a folk horror element going on. And another thing that is very prominent in the list of threats is weird funguses.
Also very threatening in real houses. If you've got a weird fungus,
you start off with black mold. Obviously, that's one of the hazards that you might need to deal with. But I'm quite glad that I never have had my house infested with bed teeth. These are a fungus that grows in the shape of teeth on your blankets and comforters, and over time they get sharper.
I've got the bed teeth description pulled up. This is actually one of the earliest ones that gets revealed to you. I think it's on day 2, right when it starts revealing like the actual supernatural elements. So I'm just going to read this so you get a little bit of a sense of the flavor. I won't do this with any other entries because I don't want to spoil anything, but this will give you a little sense of the kinds of descriptions that we're getting. Bed teeth is a good one. Bed teeth are a rare kind of household fungus known for growing in small, cone-like shapes on the underside of bed sheets, blankets, and comforters. Homeowners infested with bed teeth often report mild discomfort when sleeping, such as tickling or itching, and more rarely, slimy acidic residue on their skin. Danger. Bed teeth are not directly harmful to most humans given their brief sleeping schedules. However, they tend to gradually grow sharper over time if left untreated, which can lead to infections in the open wounds they cause. Solution. To prevent the growth of bed teeth, bed sheets and blankets should be washed regularly and inspected for rare, more persistent growths. Infested covers should be scrubbed thoroughly or disposed of entirely. And that's one of the more mundane nasties that can infest your home in Home Safety Hotline.
On the first day, this takes place over the course of a week in a series of different days. Each day, they give you more entries, and in addition to that, there's some changes to things like the desktop that you sign in through, where you can find videos. You can get email messages, including creepy warnings about the company itself, warning you that you must quit or you're doomed. In terms of the success and failure in the game, that's really determined based on the calls themselves. Every time you receive a call, it asks you to listen to the call. You can listen multiple times if you want, and then to read through the list and choose which of the threats you think it is. And
they'll send them an information packet.
Exactly. The callers are provided with a helpful information packet to guide them to escape. Sometimes it can be quite grim. Like you might have a caller that they're letting you know that something has gotten into their house, and given the description that you read, it sounds like they're almost certainly already dead. And I don't know how much good that
as a trigger warning for the parents out there. There are a couple of calls that are, I wouldn't say like truly distressing, but might border on it or be distressing for some folks. The one that was maybe most effective for me was a mother who was calling in tears because her child was missing. And if you read carefully, you can connect that the buzzing sound that he was describing in his closet with the false artifact entry, an entry about false human artifacts like televisions or other human-made objects that can appear in people's homes and are normally not dangerous to humans, but children or small animals can become entrapped inside. And while digestion may take years, they cannot be retrieved. And the poor mother of this child, you realize, may not ever see her child again, but she is eligible for a memory wipe if she would like, to help with the grieving process. And I'm not saying this like hit me hard, but I am a little bit susceptible to like, I'm a parent now 3 times over, and child death or endangerment in media hits a little different than it did, a decade ago. And, most of the stuff in this, it's actually easier to laugh at these callers, even in their peril. But that one was, I was not chuckling about that one.
Yeah, not as funny as the guy with roaches.
No. But yeah, overall, like the flow is basically just like take these calls. There's actually kind of a weird rhythm to it where there's a little bit of a wait in between calls. Not a very long one, but like you don't get this a lot in video games where there's like a period of time where you're just like waiting for a phone call to come in and nothing is happening. And then, you can read through the entries, and then a phone call comes in, you listen to it, make your choice and send off the information packet. And you do that about maybe 10 times for each of the 7 days. Altogether, I think the game is probably about 2 hours beginning to end. I played it in a couple of chunks, things. I think overall, like, I think it is fun and effective. I think as a horror thing, it is 100% not scary. If you saw that this is a quote unquote horror game and you're worried about it having jump scares or something, set your mind at ease. There is zero of that. I think the thing that it does that I enjoyed the most was actually kind of tangential to the main experience. It was those videos that kept popping up on the desktop. From time to time, you get these emails and videos, and the videos, like, did you? My favorite was the one that was like a recording from television of like a 90s like travel show that was like describing the most challenging but most rewarding hike in America, and it was giving you all the instructions on how to make this hike to the top of a mountain, and told you to bring your hiking boots, etc., and also a sword. I was like, okay. And then there's a segment where you pass through a cave, and it's doing this very handheld camera 90s like travelogue kind of video, and the travelogue has to pass through a quite dangerous cave where strange sounds and maybe creatures are there, and then just proceeds with climbing to the top of the mountain. Things like that, like the little videos that were part of it. I won't spoil the ending, but the ending was also I thought very funny full motion video if you get the good ending. Actually, the bad ending as well. The bad ending is also very funny. So it's overall, like, this is a fun little 2-hour experience. I think probably the best way to play this would be together with somebody, where you can kind of read through the entries together and enjoy them together, and have that second set of eyes who might notice the small detail that you missed. If you're not very observant, it is easy to miss some of those small details, send off the wrong information packet, and your supervisor Carol, chides you more and more about the low accuracy of your responses, and eventually fires you. And again, that's the bad ending. I won't spoil it, but it is very funny. But I did eventually get the good ending, and it was also very funny. So I think it's worth kind of playing through this, getting the endings. If you're just sort of exploring it, if you really just want to press on through, there are good guides available on the Steam community page. There's a guide where you can like have a list of all of the calls and have spoilered text and like hints, so that it can tell you what detail in the call you might be overlooking that will help you identify what the threat is without actually spoiling yourself, if you're looking for that kind of thing. And yeah, overall, I think this is a fun one. I enjoyed it. I would say this is a $15 game, and I am not the kind of person who usually says like, wait for a sale or whatever, but this is one where like, this is pretty new. I think it does feel sort of like lightweight enough as an experience that like, if you're not like specifically super into this particular type of horror, as I am, then it might be a thing that you could wait for a sale, because it's gonna come up on probably one of those. But I would definitely recommend checking it out, and it's on Steam and itch.io if you prefer that platform, for $15 on either spot. I think folks should check it out.
Yeah, I think you should go in understanding that this is, gameplay wise, this is essentially a matching game. But in that, it's a very effective way to deliver, I think, really well created interactive fiction. Like the callers themselves, the writing, and especially, as you mentioned, the video, all work really nicely together to create something that has a great flow to it.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. And given that it's only the two of us, and this was a relatively quick conversation, we've got some time here at the end for some What's Making Us Happy This Week. Shane, what's making you happy this week?
I'm super happy this week. I think the thing that I'll highlight really is recently I got back into the Libby app, which, if you haven't used it, is across the country. Public libraries, you can sign in and use Libby to download books and audio books and kids books. I've been having a ton of fun with that. I'm in my local Houston library, but also thank you to our friend Laura, I committed a small act of library fraud, and I'm also now in the New York Public Library on the Libby app.
Oh.
And so I've been really pouring through books ever since. It's been fantastic. So not just the one that I'm going to discuss. I've probably done more books in the last couple of weeks, all told, than I have since the beginning of the year. But we recently found out that there's a new adaptation of Shogun. Back in the 90s, there was an adaptation of this very popular book from the 70s. And I think in the early 2000s, I ended up seeing it on DVD. And it made quite an impression on me. It's the new adaptation of Shogun is on FX, and you can watch it on Hulu. And I'm very interested to check it out, just based on how much I loved the original miniseries. But what I noticed was in the library, hey, they had the audiobook of the novel. And I had never read this novel. Well, first off, because it came out in the 70s, and while was a huge hit, and deservedly so, it was kind of old hat. But I thought, well, I'll check it out. This is a long book. The audiobook of this is about 60 hours long.
Wow.
I'm a little over halfway done with it now. I have not had this much fun with a novel in a long time. Shogun is the story of a English pilot of a Dutch trading and kind of high seas vessel in the 1600s, right? And there's a man named John Blackthorne. He's this pilot who is shipwrecked in Japan, and he gets kind of caught up in the kind of political drama there. It's a very high adventure, very exciting story that kind of gets involved in the twists and turns of a character called Lord Toranaga, who's kind of based on Tokugawa Ieyasu, who's the person who united Japan in the 1600s. And so it's this really fun piece of historical fiction. It has everything I love in good historical fiction. It has a lot of maritime action. Love me some action on a boat. Love me the age of sail. This is all good stuff. So I am probably, like I said, like 60, close to 70% of the way through this 60-hour audiobook. I have never done so many chores in my life. With a 60-hour page turner of an audiobook, I become a missile of home upkeep productivity, let me tell you. So that's pretty much where I'm at, and I'm so excited that the moment I'm done with this 60-hour audiobook, I can turn around and watch this celebrated new miniseries of the book on Hulu. So you basically know where I'm going to be for the foreseeable future. Is deep in the Shogun stuff.
That rules. That rules.
It really does. I had never really even thought about reading this. I actually did in high school a history project on Tokugawa Ieyasu. I am definitely not pronouncing that right, I hope. Someone can tell me the name of the most famous Japanese shogun. But that period has always been super fascinating to me. And what I'll say for this book is, so it has like 4 parts, right? In the first part of the book, your main character, John Blackthorne, has a very kind of English mentality. And he's crash landed in Japan, and him and a few members of his crew basically go through hell. The voyage itself is hell. Their crash is hell. The second part of the book, he's kind of finding a way to stay alive and meeting a lot of really interesting characters. This book has fantastic characters. And by the middle of the book, it becomes extremely philosophical, and your Blackthorn as the main character is really kind of learning to think in the Japanese style, like learning their ways and their ideas and their philosophies, and actually coming around to seeing them in most ways as superior to his original English ideas. And so I'm absolutely loving this book. Can't recommend it enough. And thank you to Laura for letting me pretend to live with her long enough to sign up for a New York Public Library card.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, I've done the Libby app, but I think the selection, like I live out in the burbs in Houston, and the public library system around here is very underfunded. I gather, and in fact, like it really headlined by the fact that a couple of months ago, they had an app for the, I'm in Montgomery County, nobody be creepy. Montgomery County, Texas had the Montgomery County library system had a mobile app of their own where you could do things like, see what books you had checked out and, see events for the library, the kind of basic shit you expect to be able to do on your smartphone. And they apparently, I don't know, cheaped out on their developer, and the app just straight up stopped working. And they just have all these, and they still haven't fixed it. And they have these signs in every library that's like, don't use the app. We're not going to fix it. Sorry, guys. Like not a well, I mean, like, it's got its pluses, like any library system. Like, how can you really complain? It's free. It's wonderful. It's a great resource. I get lots of great children's books there for my kids, but like, maybe not the best well-maintained library system in the world.
Well, I figure you're close enough to Houston. You ought to be able to get a Houston Public Library.
Oh, yeah, probably could,
they
honestly.
don't ask hardly anything about you. You just walk into a library. And that seemed to be pretty much the case for New York. I'll say the Houston Public Library system is great. I have one. I don't know if this is a complaint against Houston Public Library. This is really a complaint against the Houston city government. But is it, Raygan, is it appropriate for me to have a sidebar in the podcast and
if you want,
talk
whatever,
about
man. We got a little bit of time
facing food not bombs in Houston, Texas?
Oh God, yes.
Okay. So ever since I was a high schooler, I've been fairly fond of this organization called Food Not Bombs. They're across the country, but the chapter in Houston is, it's a lot like what it sounds like. They were kind of connected when I was a young guy to kind of the nascent punk community in Houston. Mm-hmm. But what they really do is they provide nutritious, delicious vegetarian meals to the homeless. And like the not bombs part, like they're all about providing food to people, but it's also like explicitly comes with a message of peace.
Yeah, a message of peace. And like, I've talked to people from that organization a number of times as well, especially back in high school. I think like we just knew some like punk kids who were big into Food Not Bombs. Yeah. And it's just like a service organization. It's a little bit like, it's very, very like lefty politics, but that's, like I'm into it.
What they have done for all of that time has been that on, I don't know exactly, it's several nights a week, they would go to this large plaza, kind of public space in the middle of downtown Houston, and hand out this food to the homeless. And that's something they've done forever in this location. And at a certain point, the city decided that they would start interpreting some laws that had been on the books for a while differently and start cracking down on these guys. And for over 50 weeks in a row, they have been issuing a ticket every time to somebody from Food Not Bombs, telling them that they can't distribute food to the homeless in downtown Houston because of requirements for things like, hey, you can't give out food to more than 6 people unless you're providing porta potties or something like that, right? And the insane thing, I'm sorry I'm staying on this story for so long, is that when they've taken these tickets to court in Houston, they haven't been able to actually prosecute them because they haven't been able to successfully assemble a jury who said that they would enforce the law that Houston has against feeding more than 6 people in a public place. So it's kind of absurd. I had some hope that our new mayor would not continue our old mayor's stupid decision on this, but it sounds like he's, if anything, doubled down on it. So
ridiculous.
It really is. Sorry to derail our podcast for something
tying
that's
this together with the reason that this came up is that they frequently operate this operation outside of the downtown Houston library. Shane mentioned
this is also not something that's making me happy this week.
Yeah. Well, hey, if you got a couple bucks in your pocket and you want to donate, I think they take donations online. You can just Google "Food Not Bombs Houston" or what have you. They're out there literally doing the thing, right? Like it's like hard to argue with, just like things like this and like free school lunches for children. It's like these are things that only monsters fight against, and yet like there seems to be a lot of political will to decide that no, we shouldn't give food to people who need food. Like ridiculous. Anyway, all that, blow that out your head. Let's talk about
what's making you happy.
What's making me happy? Actually, here we go. Perfect transition. I was going to talk about another food thing.
So what else could the homeless be eating, Raygan?
Let them eat walking mushrooms. I was gonna say, I was just gonna recommend. I know this is a super popular thing. So like, if you're, a gamer type and listening to this show, there's a very good chance that you're also like vaguely aware of like the very most popular animes of the year or what have you. But I was gonna recommend, if you haven't watched it, that I think really almost literally anyone should be watching Delicious in Dungeon on Netflix. It's incredible. I thought I wasn't going to really dig it because years ago when this first came out as a manga and it was like starting to kind of pop off a little bit, I tried it. I read the first volume of the manga and I wasn't really that into it. I just didn't kind of get it. But like as an anime, it like absolutely sucked me in, and I've been like watching it every week religiously. Like Netflix does the like whole season drop thing for everything except anime, because they know that anime fans will not have it. They need to have things as they come out, and they were like really losing out. So it's one of those shows that Netflix is literally dropping like once a week.
Every Thursday. I've been watching this show. I've been watching Delicious in Dungeon with my son. It's there are some elements that might be a little mature for a kindergartner, but this is so up his alley that I'm watching it with adult supervision with him, right? So the story is about a party of adventurers that are kind of dungeon delving, and it's really a rescue mission to save someone who was eaten by a dragon, and they think
I love the rescue mission aspect of this because the premise is it's all very like it's Western fantasy with the sort of Japanese JRPG inflection. So it doesn't have the like thing that I kind of dislike in a lot of anime where they like are like literally like looking at people's like scores and stats or whatever. Yeah. But it does have all these little elements that feel very sort of JRPG. And one of the elements is if you die in this dungeon, you can be revived with magic. But they have to have your body. And so there's an industry of people going down into this dungeon for treasure and for conquering the dungeon. And there's also an industry of people retrieving corpses to revive them so people can go back in. This party of adventurers at the very first moment of the show is this very typical party. There's a fighter, there's a couple of magic users, there's a barbarian type, there's a sort of Japanese samurai looking guy. They're all down in the dungeon. They're fighting a red dragon, but they are starving. They haven't had a good meal in days because they couldn't carry enough food in with them, and they're all exhausted, and that really wrecks their fighting. And finally, one of their number, the beloved magic user named Fallon, gets eaten by the red dragon. And the rest of them are able to teleport out with a special spell that Fallon casts just as she's going down the gullet. And so Fallon's brother, Laios, the fighter, and a few of his compatriots, a sort of half foot is what they call it in the show, like a halfling rogue named what's his name? Chilchuck.
Chilchuck, yeah.
And
he's a great dude.
He's a great dude. And Marcel, the magic user elf, decide to go best character, best girl. Marcel is amazing. And honestly, watch the dub. The voice they've got for her in English. I'm usually like a subs guy, but like the voice they have for Marcel in the English dub is so good. Like it's worth watching the dub for this. It's like an incredible dub. Netflix really puts their money into it, you know, and like got great performances out of people. But anyway, it's a race against time. They have to get back and kill this red dragon before Fallon is completely digested, so they have something to revive. So they want to cut her out of the belly of the red dragon and revive her before she's completely digested, at which point she can't be revived. And the big, you know, the thing that this whole show is about, and the whole premise is that they are a party with limited resources, and so their scheme is, rather than tote a bunch of food into the dungeon, they are going to eat monsters on the way down. And
this
so
is specifically the fighter's plan. And
yes,
it seems like he's been cooking up this plan for a long time. He has looked at every monstrous freak that he's fought underground and thought to himself, edible?
I wonder what that would taste like
Possibly.
fried. And it's just like, it kind of alternates between the sort of like food porn, like animated food, you know, cooking show stuff, which didn't initially seem like it was going to appeal to me, but it's so tied in with the story that
pretty
it
much
just makes
every
a perfect
episode
marriage.
is focused around dealing with some supernatural creature in its first half, and in the second half is figuring out how to cook whatever's left over after the fight.
Yeah, like,
and
have you ever thought about eating a mimic? How would you eat a mimic? Well, you'll see.
So what I really love about this depiction of the sort of world of D&D is...
Yeah, because it is very... I mean, it's via the JRPG side of things, but this feels much more D&D than most things like that.
Specifically, this feels like old school D&D. The sort of old school D&D that was very focused on level by level exploring a dungeon. And it really feels like the early editions that were the direct handiwork of Gary Gygax. There's a term in fantasy RPGs called Gygaxian realism, or sometimes Gygaxian naturalism. And it's the idea that the world of D&D is a real world, and that, you know, when you are exploring these dungeons level by level, going down on a grid and fighting things like a living treasure chest, you know, that this is a world that exists for reasons other than purely gaming reasons, or, you know, purely, you know, weird fantasy creatures. And so a lot of the level of the dungeon that you're on will have, in sort of the early Gygaxian stuff, kind of an ecology to it. You know, you'll have, even in when the page is mostly graph paper, it'll still have notes in there in those early editions that says, well, for each of this number of goblins, you'll have this number of hobgoblins and this number of bugbears, and you are left to kind of imagine, what does that mean about their nature and their society, right? And this does that exceedingly well. It kind of goes in the direction of, because they're eating all of these things, in the direction of like, well, what is the biology of this creature actually like? And there are some really fun episodes where creatures that you absolutely assume that you could not eat, like living armor, right? An animated suit of armor, They find a way to make that into a recipe, and they do it by kind of reimagining what that creature really is in a really creative way. I won't spoil any of this stuff because it's really fun to see. But and they do this when you get to the recipe sections. It really is a chance for the characters to shine, because the characters start off as your straight D&D tropes. It might as well just be the fighter, the elf, the halfling, the dwarf, right? Mm-hmm. But when I was saying Marcil, who's the elfish caster in the group, is my favorite, it's because whenever they start making the food, she's the squeamish one that is like upset to try eating any of this weird stuff. And it's a gag that never gets old. It's really good. So, what else is there to say about this? I've kind of taken over what's making you happy on this, Raygan, by saying all the things that I love about it.
I mean, I'm just really, really digging it. So from what I've read, like right now would be a good time to get into it if you are the sort of person who likes to binge an anime, because it is approaching the 12th episode. I think the 11th episode is the one that's currently out, and the 12th will be coming out on Thursday. From what I've heard, this is going to be a 2-core, which means that they are producing about 26 to 28 episodes straight through, which means that they are probably going to be adapting nearly all of the manga, or at least a good like 2/3 of what's currently out there and written. So it's not one of those things where you're going to, a lot of manga, you get like 12 episodes, a lot of manga to anime adaptations, you get this like, 12 episodes, and they either have to kind of rush or invent a conclusion. And then like, are you going to get a second season? Well,
or turn a fight into 5 episodes by having the characters involved scream at each other.
Yeah, or that, yeah. But like this actually has, I think, pretty solid pacing. And, if you want to binge, now would be a great time to do it, because you'll be binging the 12 episodes that make up basically the like first arc of the story. And I can't wait for more of it too, because from what I gather, they are doing like a sort of subs. These things, it's like one season, but like it's broken into 2 halves, and so the second half is coming up. And I think they're sort of rolling straight into it. I don't think there's going to be a long delay. So great time to catch up. And I really, really recommend it. It's fantastic. And I also decided to catch up on the manga, and that is also great. But it is such a straight adaptation that like you can't go wrong either way. You won't be missing anything either way. And the animation is incredible. It's from Studio Trigger. They're a great like storied history anime studio. And like, sometimes things just look, it's like fine. It's like good looking anime, but sometimes they just do like such weird angles and weird faces, and like they'll like really just pour a bunch of frames of animation into some like weird reaction or something. Like it's just one of those shows that like it doesn't sometimes it looks like a good looking, well drawn, beautiful anime, and other times it just has something extra. It just like it just occasionally looks really freaking good. So great looking anime, highly recommended. And it's on Netflix, which means that basically everybody can go and check it out.
Yeah, between this and Frieren, I feel like pretty spoiled for great anime coming out.
We've been eating, man. Yeah. Been a great year for it. So thank you, listeners, for joining us on this Brocast episode of The Short Game. You can find our show and all the information you need at shortgame.fm. That's got links to all the stuff, including me and Shane's socials, as well as our absent co-hosts. Hi, co-hosts. And you can find links to our show on all the various different podcast platforms where you can subscribe, leave a review, do all those things we really appreciate. You can also find, of course, a link to our Patreon. All the patrons of this show get access to our Discord, which is where we talk about the games we're playing, talk about the show that we are, upcoming stuff for future episodes. We have channels up for the games that folks are most excited about talking about. And of course, it's a place where people suggest games to the show. Most of the games we cover on the show are suggested by our listeners. And if you would like to suggest something to us, you can, of course, leave us a review. You can, of course, send us a message anywhere that you can find us. Of course, shortgame.fm has lots of options there, but the very best way is to hop into our Discord and talk to us. And if you go to patreon.com/theshortgame or shortgame.fm and click the Patreon link, you can find us there. We'd really appreciate it. That money helps us host the show, helps us replace equipment and other little needs that come up, even helps us buy games and keep the show running. But But of course, it gets you into our Discord, gets you early access to episodes by a little. As soon as I get them edited, they go straight out to patrons on a special feed. And occasionally we have other perks that we think of as we can. So we would love to have you. And thanks again for joining us on this episode of The Short Game. You can find my info on shortgame.fm. I've been Raygan. Thanks very much for joining us on the show.
And I'm Shane.
And listen to us again. Oh, and next week might be a bit weird. I'm going to be out of town for a little bit. I know the show schedule has been a little wonky. You may have noticed that I wasn't on the last episode, and I wasn't on one not too long before that either. Yeah, things have been up and down, a little bit of a crazy schedule, some life events interfering, but we're doing our best to keep the show as regular as we can. I will not be here next week, and Nate is also out of town, which means there's a very good chance that next week will be either a re-release or gap week. Apologies in advance for that, but we'll be coming right back at you with something really good. So thanks very much for joining us on this episode of The Short Game.